All right, we can get started. First of all, thank you all for coming in the inclement weather. Thank you for coming out to the Tahoe Regional Young Professionals in partnership with the Tahoe Chamber and South Shore Chamber, all the chamber, South Tahoe Chamber, presenting Tahoe Town Hall, our ongoing civic engagement event series to really get people informed about the issues in the community, get them educated, and in this case, making your decision on who you're going to vote for in the upcoming primary elections on June 5th. Don't forget to register to vote by May 21st if you have not already. We have information on our front table for that. I want to thank our candidates who are here today that we'll introduce in a minute. But a few housekeeping rules. We're going to start with our pre-canned questions that the candidates will debate back and forth about. We will then turn to audience Q&A. If you have a question, we have question cards and pins at the front desk. There will be Miss Lovely Palacio here. We'll be handing out cards, collecting them. Pass your cards towards the front if you want one of those answered. If you need a card, just quietly raise your hand and we'll get you one. We're going to go through a series of questions, like I said, hear from all the candidates, and then hopefully you'll have a better decision on who you want to vote for. So, and then, of course, thank you to our lovely streaming partner, Tahoe Production House. And welcome everyone on our live stream right now at Tahoe, TRYP.org, and of course to Hotel Azure for accommodating us in their lovely conference space. So without further ado, we will begin. So now each candidate, I would like to have you introduce yourself. We'll go down the line and you have 2 minutes.
Not yet.
We already got that. So Kenny, and make sure you stand up when you speak.
Hello, Kenny Kurzweil. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Hold it up right about here. A little lower.
Okay.
A little
Kenny
higher.
Kurzweil. I'm a 41-year resident here. I started out as a local and have become a resident over the years. And I actually prefer a resident over local because when you are a resident, you have a stake in the community. You either own a home or you've been a long-term renter and you are involved in the community, whether it's through politics, local involvement, community involvement, or just helping out somebody on the street. I am going to be a representative of this community for the residents, including Pollock Pines all the way up here. Strawberry, Kybers, Tahoma. We're all in this together. I know this community. I have written articles for the last 22 years about this community. Is there a timer somewhere I can see?
You got 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. I've written articles, I've been involved, and I think it's about time that I got out from behind my license plate where I can actually make a difference. I feel like I've made a difference in this community along with other community leaders, but now it's time to take a forefront and get out in front.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue?
Thank you, Jonathan. First of all, thank you all for coming. And I want to thank TRYP and the two chambers for putting this on this evening. Thank you so much. I'm a wife, a mother, and your county supervisor, and vice chair of the Board of Supervisors currently. I've been a resident in Myers for almost 40 years, and 34 of those years have been spent with my husband. And we've had 2 wonderful children. I've got one today, Molly is here to support me. And I've had over 15 years of public service experience in this town. I was on the board of trustees for Lake Tahoe Unified School District for 11 years, and then a little over 3 years, 3.5 years here as your county supervisor. And I really feel that experience is incredibly important, especially in this race. My past experience, I can go over it with you. I'm past president, current member of Lake Tahoe Wildlife Care. I'm a past president and current member of Strophamus International of South Lake Tahoe. I graduated from LTCC in 1984, which was the year that the Olympics were happening down in LA, the Summer Olympics, and I was honored because I was a student trustee. I got to run the Olympic torch for them for that year. I'm past president of the Lake Tahoe Community College Foundation. I'm past president of the board there, and board member of, past president of the Chamber of Commerce board. I'm a member, have been a member of the Barton Foundation Community Advisory Committee, and I have owned and operated my own business in Myers. All this experience has taught me that listening, Being prepared and making informed decisions is critical to this job. I have earned the respect of my fellow colleagues in representing District 5, and I'm the only candidate with such an extensive breadth and depth of experience, both public and private boards. It's been an honor and privilege to represent you, and I feel I'm the best prepared, qualified. I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
I'll give him the next.
Keep it over that way. Well, again, thank you, TRYP, and for both chambers. I appreciate you giving the opportunity to know me. I have a little reading problem here. It's age. Well, I'm running on this election out of a passion for keeping District 5 rural and South Lake Tahoe as a community. 10 years ago, my wife and I purchased our house outside the rural community of Myers within the confines of the El Dorado National Forest. We chose this area because in our home because we respected the quiet and the beauty that surrounded us. Many of the residents who reside in District 5 today chose to live in their community because of the same reasons. Now many of these communities are under attack by outdated laws, ordinances, and overburdened by an overburdened system by the tourist population. What I'd like to do is employ my knowledge and my expertise to help resolve the issues that face us. Lake Tahoe is a world-class destination, and it's time that the residents of the basin and rural El Dorado County expect nothing but the best for its people. We have a real problem that needs real solutions. We need experience, and I have been a dedicated public servant for over 40 years, and that is ready to step in and tackle our issues from day one. I have worked with federal, local, state, regional agencies, business and community groups, and environmental advocacy groups, communicating directly with the top-level representatives regarding projects and policies. Many of the issues I'll talk about tonight have remained unresolved and have only become worse in the last 12 years. So you need to ask yourself, has my life, my city, my county become better or worse? And so with my experience, I want to ask you to vote for knowledge, confidence, and experience. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Norma Santiago, and I also wish to express my gratitude for you being here and for having this opportunity for you to hear not only from me but from the other candidates. June 5th is an important day for all of us because this is an opportunity for you to shape who you want to help lead you to building the community you want. I have been honored and humbled to have been elected county supervisors in 3 separate occasions. And so the question I get asked a lot is, why are you coming back? Some of them are saying, are you crazy? And I have to tell you, it was a very difficult decision for me, and I can tell you exactly the day it happened. It was happening January 29th of this year when I decided. And it was because I was becoming involved in some issues that relative to the Lake Tahoe and this region, and one dealing with state parks and the other one dealing with biomass infrastructure. But what I found out and what I realize, and something you've probably heard me say before, if you're not, dealing with issues is very complex in Lake Tahoe. There are a lot of stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. And I've said it a lot, if you're not at the table, you'll find yourself playing part of the meal. And what I'm finding and what I'm feeling, what people have done to approach me, is that they're feeling that the community is now part of the meal.
20 seconds.
And that they're not at the table. So I'm here to bring back the community's voice to that table. And I ask for your support on June 5th.
Thank you all for your introductions. We are now going to enter our what we are calling our debate style session of tonight's town hall. For the audience's information, we have come up with 4 preset questions on 4 topics. The candidates were not shared those questions in advance, and to determine the order they will be answered, we had them randomly draw numbers. The candidate that is asked the question will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Each candidate will then have a 90-second rebuttal, 90 seconds to add on additional information. From there, any further responses are kept to 30 seconds. The order will be Susan Novosel, actually down the line, Jeffrey, Norma, and then Kenny. And then after that, we'll open it up to audience Q&A and questions that were submitted online. So as any questions come up to you and you want to write them down, if you don't have a card, just raise your hand and our lovely assistant Jenna will pass one to you. So we'll start with Sue. And again, you'll have 2 minutes to answer this. The topic is vacation home rentals. Surprise, surprise. What are your thoughts on the current regulations that the City of South Lake Tahoe has imposed? What did they do right and what did they do wrong? How can you ensure that the county will learn from their successes and mistakes in dealing with this same issue?
I need a microphone.
Oh, we're doing one up there for all of you,
Oh,
just to
okay.
eliminate the feedback.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, great, thank you so much, and that is a great question. Vacation rentals are the big issue right now, and rightfully so. There's been a change in the way vacation rentals have been marketed and are available in our communities, and it has had an effect. I believe your first question was, how do you feel about what the city has done first? The city has reacted with trying to put a heavy arm on the vacation rentals, and it's been difficult for everybody because, again, it's such a changing, quick movement of what is happening in the market that it's very difficult. It's similar to what's going on in cannabis. It's constantly changing, and so the more you try to put a regulation on something before you know what's going on, the more consequences there are. So I have a real strong feeling that what the county is doing, what we've done, is started in February, looking at every part of the issue. We have an ad hoc committee of which I sit on, myself and one other supervisor, and we're asking for input from the entire community. What's good, what's bad, all the different issues in vacation rentals, and there are a lot of issues. There's sound, noise, parking, you name it. They're there. We've all been hearing and talking about it. But the bottom line is, how can we assure that we're going to do something that's right, that's the best? And that is, and the way you do that is what is the same approach I've always taken in government. You've got to listen to all the sides, hear all the issues, see what's going on, not just in our community, but in other communities that are similar.
30 seconds.
And see what's worked and what hasn't. And that's what we're doing in the county right now, and that's what I'm determined to make happen, is listen to all sides before we make any decisions, and then come back to the board. We're going back to the board quickly here, as soon as we can, and going back with recommendations so that we can all make that
In
decision.
your last 15 seconds, what do you think the city has gotten right about their regulations that are currently in place?
I think the idea of having a maximum on occupancy, I think the idea of issuing noise concerns, of making sure that there are noise ordinances out there that are enforceable. That's what the county has to do a better job on, is enforcement. And the city, I think, has done that good job in trying to show that if we've got bad actors out there, if we have bad actors, that we take care of them, that we get them out.
Great. Who would like to have the first rebuttal on this question?
If anybody, you don't have to.
Did you say something?
And please stand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you have 90 seconds.
All right, so let's do this very quickly. And yeah, I think that the whole thing is, first of all, at least you had the city, I would agree in terms of how they were focusing on enforcement. I think that what we face is that you're somehow creating legislation or creating ordinances when the horse is still out there. In other words, you're trying to close the barn door and the horse has already left. So I have a problem with trying to make ordinances as the problem continues to grow. So for the county, the problem has been exacerbated because of the ordinances that the city has passed. And so we're seeing increases in permitting. But it seems to me that before you solve a problem, you really have to have a keen analysis of what the problem actually is.
30 seconds.
And to look at those issues. So I am in favor, from the county standpoint, to doing a temporary moratorium on permits, on new permits, only to give us the opportunity to further evaluate these problems so that when we come out we don't have to go back to the people who have issued permits, have been issued permits, and say
5
you can't do
seconds.
that anymore. So responsiveness is a big thing. I approached the current supervisor
Thank-
back in 2016
Norma,
about this
Thank
issue.
you.
Thank you.
Would anyone care to comment on the idea, Jeffrey or Kinney, on the idea of a temporary moratorium being put in place that Norma just proposed?
Well, we do have a serious problem. It's a complex issue. And I do support a moratorium. The problem is that we have limited land use. Land use is scarce in the basin. And with that limited land use, there's only so many houses that can be built. However, if you allow all the houses to be eaten up by investors and second homes and things like that, who's left to be a community? So putting a moratorium on will at least set the clock right now to look at where is our housing stock? What kind of community are we going to have? And how do we arrange the zoning? Right now, the zoning is so mixed, and we're operating businesses. We're turning our homes into hotels and our hotels into homes. That's not the right way to have a community. So we need to look at a comprehensive list and do things. Right now, we're doing things piecemeal, and we're in analysis paralysis. Nothing is getting done. The industry doesn't benefit because they don't know where we're going to be, and the residents don't benefit because they're not getting any peace.
Kinney?
I'm glad to see that they're using the word moratorium. At the last VHR meeting that we had at the middle school, I actually stood up and said the word moratorium. Now, I got claps from the real estate, I got claps from the anti-VHR, pro-VHR. It's a mixed board, but what a lot of people heard was when they said the word, or when we said the word moratorium, all they heard was the word ban. And I want to make clear that I know we're on the same sheet of music. Moratorium is not a ban. And when I first presented that, I presented that as a moratorium to get the Board of Supervisors and hopefully the City of South Lake Tahoe to enforce the rules that are on the books right now and do it right now. It would put pressure on them to do that. And I'm glad to see we're on the same sheet of music.
So Sue, you were the only person that did not say moratorium, so I'd like to give you 30 seconds to talk about your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Well, absolutely. Yeah, you know, in the county right now, we have, our opinion is we're studying the issues and nothing is off the table. I think when you start with a moratorium, what you're doing, to put it in Norma's words, would be that you're closing the barn door while the horses are still out the pasture.
10 seconds.
You are trying to figure out a system when you're not allowing the system that is trying to work, let it work, okay? I believe strongly that, yes, if we need a moratorium, if we see a run, great. We have not seen that yet. We only have a 12% increase this
Thank you,
this
Sue.
year.
We don't need back and forth from now. I appreciate if you have something that you'd like to point out. All right, so moving on, our next question is for Jeffrey. And again, you'll have 2 minutes to discuss the topic if you want to pass the mic his way. The next topic, again, no surprise here, is cannabis. The residents of South Lake Tahoe, especially the city of South Lake Tahoe and the Tahoe Basin portion of El Dorado County, overwhelmingly approved Prop 64, which legalized recreational cannabis in 2016. How will you fight for reasonable cannabis regulations in a majority anti-cannabis county? Talking about the West Slope.
Well, you've given me a pretty tough question. I know that the people have spoken through Prop 64, but there's still a whole lot of unsettled issues. Just to start with, it's still a federal crime. We have to work on the federal level to make things out, change the legislation there if we really want to have the freedom to do such things. The other part of it is that, as a federal crime, it's a cash business. You can't take your money to the bank because the bank is federally chartered. You can't really report your income to the IRS because it's a federal crime. So these are some issues that are still outstanding, even though we have a desire to have legal recreational cannabis. Some of the other things that are out there is, what's the demand on our system? Did you know that Colorado has recorded that, this is from Xcel Energy, their supplier, that in the last 4 years, 55% of the energy demand has been from growing operations. What about water? Water is the gold of California, right? It takes 1/2 to 1 gallon of water per plant for indoor cultivation. We're having problems with our existing water supplies in California. And California hasn't done any analysis on the demand on our electricity grid or our water supplies or any of those things. And what about transportation? You know, if you're on a federal highway, again,
30
federally chartered,
seconds.
these are all problems that, although we had the ideal that it's great, let's have recreation, it's open, no longer a crime, but there's a lot of other issues that are unsettled that don't allow it to really be as free as you like.
So I'll ask you a simple yes, no. Do you believe in the recreational sale of cannabis in El Dorado County at this time?
Not at this time.
Great. So now we'll open it up for rebuttals. Does anyone want to take the first crack at it?
Are we all going to be asked the same question?
You will have 90 seconds to respond to his response.
Also, we're not going to be asked that question.
No, now is your chance to
Oh.
talk about that topic. Yes.
Yeah, and to differentiate, again, just to differentiate yourself from Jeffrey or Agree or whatever the case may be, everybody's gonna get an individual question, they'll have 2 minutes with that, and then everybody gets a 90-second rebuttal if they choose to.
Okay. To answer Devin's last question, absolutely. You know, we voted on this. I don't smoke marijuana, but I look at it as a taxable and moneymaker. Nevada actually introduced that 6 months before it was legal. And look at them, they are way ahead of the curve of us. And we can look at this as the same way as a moratorium for a VHR. Why don't we get it into place right now, instead of having a moratorium on whether we're gonna sell it or not, and start collecting the taxes on this? So, yeah, I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you. And another good question. So what I feel about the cannabis is, because I'm on the ad hoc committee for El Dorado County, is very strongly that what we need to do, and what we're actually looking to do right now in the county, is to come back to the voters and say, what about Prop 64 do you want? Because there's a lot of issues. Prop 64 was just yes or no, do you want cannabis, recreational cannabis in your area? Didn't really identify all the different problems with that, which are outdoor versus indoor, cultivation, what kind of cultivation do you want, all kinds of manufacturing, distribution. So we've been dealing with that inside of our ad hoc committee, talking about it, having public committee meetings, and now what we're going to do is form some questions and go back to the voters and say, here's your options. Number one, do you want taxation? And I firmly believe that we can't have a legalized cannabis cultivation, recreational,
30
whatever it
seconds.
is, without having taxation to be able to provide for education of our children and for enforcement. And right now, we don't have that. And so until we do that, then we can't, in my mind, we can't allow it. So I'm very much for it, as long as we get the taxation to be able to educate our children and enforce.
So just to follow up
Yep.
on that real quick, when you say you want to go back to the voters, are you looking at putting something on the ballot in the near future in 2018, November?
Yes, our ad hoc committee right now is working on a November ballot issue. There will probably be 5 or 6 questions. Number one will be, do you want the taxation? If that's a no, then the rest are no's. If you want the taxation, what would that look like? What kind of indoor, outdoor, for recreational, for medicinal use, how will that look? So we're
Awesome.
forming those, and it will be coming
Great.
back to us.
Thank you.
Norma?
The proposition is very typical of California politics, you know. You vote on something and then you say yes and then leave it to the local jurisdictions to figure out how you make it work. I have to say that I totally agree with what Jeffrey has said, is that you can't just start. There are so many issues with it. It's not only the issues of water and the environmental impacts. How are you going to measure those? And yes, there's some revenue generation. I mean, we've heard that from several jurisdictions. But there's also the health aspects of this. What are you going to do when someone's pulled over because they're driving erratically and they're under the influence of marijuana? We don't have any of those information. So I think that systematically, we need to come up with a framework And I think that the Board of Supervisors, with their ad hoc committee, could come up with a framework of what are you going to do in terms of regulation, in terms of penalties for, misuse
15
or
seconds.
those kinds of things. They can come up with that framework and then have broad discussions with the community in terms of have they addressed those issues
5
so
seconds.
that it works.
Thank you.
Would anyone like another 30 seconds to add on to anything that was said? All right, so moving on to the next question. This question is for Norma. Oh, yeah.
Don't I get the,
You get a
30 seconds.
30 seconds, that's
30
it,
second
okay.
rebuttal to the rebuttal.
oh, rebuttal?
Of the
to- oh,
original
that's what I was
question.
wondering, waiting for, there we go.
It's inception, don't worry about it.
Yeah. So anyway, just a couple of facts for you. The Berkeley Lawrence National Lab said that about 1% of the national electricity use comes to about 6 billion a year and amounts to about 15 million tons of greenhouse gases.
5 seconds, Jeffrey.
Explosions have occurred. These are all things that we need to settle before we open our dispensaries and do things as a business. The state's keeping the tax money. We don't get it.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
All right, so the next, Kenny, 30 seconds.
The thing about the electrical power is I don't think that the electrical company is going to actually put a stop to this because they're making quite a bit of money off of this. We've had growing here forever, not only in this town, but in other towns. And until somebody actually contacted the electric company to find out whether they were using more electricity than was required
10
by the
seconds.
house, they never said a word. They're taking the money. This all boils down to money.
Sue?
Thank you. And
Last
I just want to say, here's the bottom line. Prop 64 passed. We are dealing with this, and we have to deal with it. So it's how you want to deal with it, and I think that's important, and that's what we're trying to do in the county, is figure out how to deal with it. And we're bringing it back to the voters and saying, here's specifics. Let's have you figure out for us what we want.
Norma?
One last one.
Last one?
Last 30 seconds. It's a hot topic.
Stand, please.
It's kind of high. No, I'm only kidding.
Norma? Norma, stand.
I'm sorry. I get really impassioned. So, yeah, it's good to bring it back, but have a framework. Don't have a bunch of questions. Have a framework from which to base on, to work from, so that people are informed about it. And, I know in my experience, my previous experience, that we had a lot of problems with water
10
quality,
seconds.
with these illegal grows that were happening on national forest lands. We need to bring those partners into the mix as well. So that's what I'm saying, is that
Thank you,
build the
Norma.
framework first.
Thank you, Norma.
Thank you for the lively conversation on that topic. Hopefully, now we're getting in the groove of the back and forth, and we can
Yeah,
keep that
but
up.
you didn't do the 30 seconds on the VHR, so
Hey,
I'm going
the
to take
30
you back on
the
that.
30 seconds was out there for everyone. So the next question is for Norma. You will have 2 minutes. Everyone will be given a chance to have 60 seconds to add on, and then an additional 30 seconds if you so desire.
90 seconds, then 30.
90 seconds, then 30, yes. So the question is on the topic of transportation. Topical again. The population base of the West Slope, Northern California, Northern Nevada, the Bay Area is booming, along with increased visitation to South Lake Tahoe, with El Dorado County being the main gateway to the lake for many people. How will you, as supervisor, advocate for District 5's infrastructure and transportation needs if elected? And really, please provide some detail behind that.
Stand, please, Norma. That's okay.
You're talking about advocating for the transportation needs of, so that, first of all, there was a study that was done quite a while ago, was talking about the Beta Basin, that actually talked about some possible solutions to the transit or traffic issues as people come to visit the Lake Tahoe Basin. Talk about employing intelligent transportation systems, talking about possible metering of traffic. How do you advocate for funding for those projects that we have there? You have to build on those relationships that you have. And that is getting at the table with folks like, folks within with Caltrans, folks within the state, Federal Highways Commission. One advantage of being on the county, being a member of the County Board of Supervisors, is that you also sit on the Tahoe Transportation District Board. So those issues come to fruition, and then advocating for those funding opportunities. But there are a lot of things that need to be done. We need to look at electrification. We need to look at how can we best manage traffic coming up here. We need to look at our road systems and investing money in our road systems. And I know the county has a road fund that's coming out of the casino money
30
specifically for doing that. So looking at identifying those funding opportunities and being able to advocate for that by letting people know what impacts that traffic has and the investment they can make in keeping Lake Tahoe popular and making sure that their
10
experience
seconds.
here is good.
Norman, just real quick, what did you mean by electrification? You mentioned that, it sounds like a buzzword, but I just wanted to know exactly what that is.
Well, thank you
Just-
for asking that.
Well, just quickly, 15 seconds.
Okay, what I'm talking about, electrification in terms of having more electric vehicles being able to come here, having electric buses, you minimize pollution, a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
El Dorado County is just per capita in this region has the most electric car ownership
Thank you,
here.
Norma.
Awesome, thanks, Norma. Just curious. That's why there's two of us here to,
Yes.
That's fine.
it's very hard with only one person.
Who would like to open up their response? Jeffrey, you have 90 seconds.
Okay. Yes, we need to have a suite of options to look at various modes in order to get people around the basin. But we really need to look at what our infrastructure has been suffering, and that is repaving and maintenance of our infrastructure. We don't even have a batch plant in El Dorado, so we have to go ship it from either Carson or down in Sacramento. All these things add to our costs, so we have to look at the holistic picture and how we manage our transportation. It's funny because when I was on the West Slope, they took me to what they thought was their worst road. And I live off of South Upper Truckee, and it was 3 times worse than that. So really, being a transportation professional, I have been around the country and looked at a lot of different things in transportation. I hope to bring that experience here to solve our transportation issues. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the question was actually talking more about booming population in the Bay Area and how would you solve that part
Yeah,
rather than road
basic-
maintenance. Because
yeah.
road maintenance is a whole different issue and
Right,
I'm
right.
happy to
Well,
talk about.
No,
But
well, we're hearing the term over-tourism, and we know that the population growth of the Earth is real, and we're going to continue to have more and more
Yes.
visitors here.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with our infrastructure, making sure that our needs are met?
Right. So here's the fact. So for us, for the county, we get all of our transportation funding through the state and federal grants. It's state and federal granting that makes or breaks your transportation system between the Bay Area and Lake Tahoe. And it's that system that we absolutely advocate for every day. I'm on the Tahoe Transportation District Board, and it's critical that we do go in and talk to our state legislators and talk to our federal legislators about more money for transportation. Unfortunately, a lot of the money for mass transportation lately has been spent on the bullet train you've heard so much about, going from San Francisco to the Valley, I think. And it's supposed to go to LA, it's not going there yet. But the bottom line is that this is money that's being taken away from transportation that we really need. We really need to get our transportation organized from the Bay Area to Lake Tahoe. And that takes a whole lot of money, and we're hoping that our state and federal legislators can move
30
forward.
seconds.
Thank you.
Our infrastructure up here right now cannot handle the amount of people that are coming into this basin, and it will not be able to handle another influx of more people coming into the basin. That being said, we need to let the state, the county, and the city Department of Transportation deal with the issue of the transportation on the road. We need to let the TTD, our Tahoe Transportation District, worry about the transportation here in South Lake Tahoe. They need to focus more on the bus system, which is what I believe that they're supposed to be focusing on, rather than roundabouts, loop roads, and other types of transportation. Let the city, state, and the county deal with the actual infrastructure and transportation, and let the TTD deal with our local transportation. That's what we're paying them for.
As supervisor, Kenny, how would you make sure that they do that?
We have a seat at the board. We can only implement and support what the TTD does. We can guide them in the situation. They need to do the studies. They've received money to study the transportation system in South Lake Tahoe to death. And it's time to implement it. And that's where, as a supervisor, we come in because we can implement what they come up with. If they don't come up with the right thing, it goes back to the drawing board until they come up with the right mode of transportation for this town, community.
Would anyone like 30 seconds to add on to that?
You know,
Sue, then Norma?
Okay, yeah, and I have to reiterate again, it's a federal and state issue when it comes to funding highways. Okay, what we are talking about in Tahoe Transportation District, which is fascinating and wonderful, has to do more with that connection once people get up here. How do you get them around the lake? And that is critical. It's absolutely a critical issue. But the entire district of South Lake Tahoe, the entire basin, has that connection. It's not just a regional connection, and it's more than that. It goes, we're talking about the Bay Area connection. That has to go through our federal and state funding. We're talking about billions of dollars, as we know.
Awesome.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Norma?
Again, making sure that I understand that we were talking about advocating for transportation.
Yeah.
Advocating, I'm sorry, I get to,
all
I
right.
think I'm talking to people,
There's always
across
one.
the table, I apologize. We're talking about advocating for transportation in the basin. In 2017, the TRPA adopted their regional plan.
10 seconds.
And there were 3 things in it: transit, trails, and technology. Utilizing those, looking at those 3 prongs to create a transportation system that meets the needs of the basin and beyond.
Awesome. Thank you, Norma. And Jeffrey, you want one last rebuttal here?
Yes. The essential issue is funding. And no one here but me has had the experience of working with the legislature and testifying before Congress in order to wrest loose the funding that is in there. But we need local funding as well. We have to have match dollars. And I've already proposed solutions to do that. We've been told we can't, but we need to change the legislation so we can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So on to our last question, and we'll start with Kenny. Kenny, for this question, you will have 2 minutes. The topic is local representation. Some of our residents feel that there's a granite wall between us and the county offices in Placerville. Do you think that county resources are being limited within District 5? Or in other words, do you think we are getting our fair share back in return for the amount of tax revenue we're generating for the county? And in your answer, please cite specific examples to support your stance.
Okay, infrastructure. We have the infrastructure right now in the county, located within the city limits of the county and the rural area. We have the county jail. We have the court system. We have the police department, El Dorado County Sheriff's Department is all located here. The planning department, the building department, everything is here. The senior citizen center is here. The 56-acre project is owned by the county. We absolutely do not get enough money to run those buildings or run those infrastructure. Everything has been here for years. What we have a lack of is personnel. The West Slope keeps taking all of our personnel. We used to have 7 DAs up here, and we've got 2 now. If you talk to anybody that works for the county, in the building department or anything, we've been cut back. Absolutely, we do not get enough money here. Local representation, yes, we have to absolutely have local representation.
Thank you.
Okay, so, am I ready? Okay, thank you.
Bring it.
So how do we get our fair share? We, as we were just talking about, we do have a jail system up here. We have, all kinds of county systems, county health up here. If you look at it, we're not really that far off on getting our fair share. What's important is that when some issue comes up, that we have a voice down in Placerville. That's what I have brought to you, is a voice. I have the respect, the experience, and the ability to be able to be listened to. I'm the vice chair of the vice chair of the supervisors right now. That in itself means I have the respect and the voice for our community. And it is vital. It's vitally important that we have that, because without that, they will forget us. And so I'm constantly battling for our areas.
What is your highest priority battle right now to bring what type of resource to the Tahoe Basin?
I think it's countywide, but in particular to the Tahoe Basin is mental health. We have a real issue of mental health problems in our community that has homelessness, that has drug addiction. It all adds up to mental health. A lot of that is coming down from that. So it's that collaboration. We have
15
set up
seconds.
collaboration in our community. I'm very proud of that, but we need more. And so I'm trying to get more and more money back up from our Health and Human Services Department to be back up here to deal with mental health issues.
Thank you.
Well, local representation, I understand probably for the Tahoe Basin, that's very important because of that granite wall, as it was mentioned. But as a District 5 representative, I need to represent all the local communities. That's all the way down to Pollock Pines, all the way north up to Meeks Bay and to the county line. That's a very big area. But when we look at how do we get local representation, it is about building partnerships, about being able to voice the concerns. And I have been awarded at the national level, I got an award while I was at the USDOT for excellence in partnerships. I am able to work with people. We have to build consensus, and that's what I mean by doing right local representation. I'll give you an example. When I was down in Sacramento as the director of the Transportation Authority, I met with over 100 local groups and civic leaders and was working on getting some consensus there. The bottom line is you have to go out and meet the people.
30
You have
seconds.
to talk with the leaders, and you have to build that consensus. That's how we have a voice, and I'm expert at that.
So following up on our original question, do you think, as District 5, including the West Slope portion and Tahoma portion, do you think we're getting our fair share of resources back from the county for what we give?
I think that the county has allowed certain investments that they have, like our 56-acre, to languish. I think that is wrong. We need to actually keep that. It's an investment. It has buildings, and if we're not able to manage what we have, you know, to keep them in good shape, the senior center, et cetera, the library, those things,
Great.
we
5
need to pull that
seconds.
back up and make sure that those investments for the county are not wasted.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Norma?
So I served as chair twice when I was a county supervisor. I also served as chair for the TRPA for 2 years. So yeah, that is an awesome responsibility, and you do garner quite a bit of respect. The other thing too is that I made sure that the Board of Supervisors knew what was going on in Tahoe. And I really went to get additional monies for particular projects here. When, whether there were some chamber projects that wanted some money, and making sure that there was an attention given to connect the east and the west slopes. Even with that though, I have to agree with Kenny and with Jeffrey in terms of the county still doesn't see the value of investing in South Lake Tahoe, of investing in its people and its community. I think we can get there. I think that
30 seconds.
we have great staff that can help us work with the Board of Supervisors and bring out some more of these issues. Because believe it or not, in some issues, we have stood out for the rest of the county. When it came to stormwater, when it came to some of the mental health issues
10
and what we did
seconds.
here, and some of the models that were set up here first that have been adopted by the rest of the county.
Sue, as current county supervisor, would you like to comment on Norma's stance that the county doesn't see the value in investing in Tahoe?
Sure, yeah. Well, first off, in the last 9 months, our county supervisors have met here in Tahoe 3 times. That, I think, is a record. And that's because there was an issue that was so important, that I felt was so important to our community, that we brought the county, all the board up here
15
to listen.
seconds.
That was about vacation rentals. The other one, 56 acres, I do a little quick response on that too. 56 acres has been owned by the county, but it's supposed to be maintained by the city. That includes those buildings. And we are in the midst of a negotiation with them to make sure that we get those buildings back and maintained properly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jeffrey or Kenny, any additional comments to add?
Yes, I agree. You know, there is a agreement with the city, but the bottom line is the county needs to own up. If you let your house go into disrepair, what good is that investment? That is the county's property. We need to invest to make sure that it's taken care of regardless of agreements. We should not let it fall into disrepair.
10 seconds.
And we should make sure that the services are available to the people.
Kenny?
Okay, one thing you have to ask yourself is in the 9 years that Norma was a supervisor and the last 3.5 years that Sue has been a supervisor, have we improved at all on anything we've talked about? We have not gotten any closer to anything that we did 15 years ago. So we need to have a change.
Norma, and then Sue, if she would like.
Thank you, Kenny, for that comment.
Please stand. Yep. 30
So I
seconds.
just want to talk about first of all, we also, during my tenure, because of the whole issue of the total maximum daily loads and the strain that legislation from La
15 seconds.
was going to put onto the county budget, we actually had the board for the first time come to a Lahontan board meeting. The lease agreement on the 56 acres is almost up. That's what the negotiations are going on.
Norma,
I just
that's
want to bring
time.
that
30
forward.
seconds.
That's time. And Sue, last rebuttal here, and then we'll go to audience
Thank you.
questions.
There has been change in my 3.5 years in office. We've just created a great program called Community Hubs. And that's a program where we bring our services, our county services, into your local libraries. For us, that's our local library on the 56 acres. And that's
15
where we bring
seconds.
services in, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program. Also, you'll be hearing about Track It. We're just starting it this week. It's an online program that you can go in, put your permits in. Everything's online. Pay for your permits. See
All
what
right.
your permit
Sue,
schedule
that's
looks
your
like.
30 seconds.
It's a great program.
Thank you all for surviving our gauntlet round of initial questions. So now we are going to open it up to questions that we received online from the community members and questions that we have received in person so far tonight. So I'm going to start with Kenny. You have your claim to fame is being the Tahoe ski bum. How do you plan on balancing your current businesses, your ski bum lifestyle, and being our county supervisor, especially on powder days?
And how many seconds does Kenny have here?
Kenny, you have 90 seconds.
90 seconds, okay.
Ready, go.
This is a job interview. You guys are the bosses. I'm the employee, or hope to be employee of the county. I want to work for you guys. So I am going to be a full-time supervisor. And I was asked this question earlier quite a few times when I was running last time, 4 years ago. And I've
10
had the same
seconds?
answer.
Oh,
10
sorry.
seconds?
No, keep it, sorry.
Okay. I've had the same answers that I've had since the beginning. On a powder day, you can find me up at Chairline at Sierra every day of the week, okay? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't golf, and I don't play tennis. All I do is ski. I'm going to be a full-time supervisor. And if it happens to be a powder day and there is an agendized item or something that I have to do for the community, yeah, I'm going to bypass the powder day. And that hurts to say that, but I am going to be a full-time supervisor for this community, including Pollock Pines and over to Tahoe and everybody else. And as far as my business goes, I will close my businesses down or I will turn them over to my children and let them run it, and I will be a full-time supervisor.
Thank you.
Sue, it looks like you'd like to
If you want me to, okay.
move on that. Yeah,
Thank
30
you.
seconds.
Yeah, it is a full-time job. I regularly spend 60 hours a week and go down to Placerville at least twice a week to discuss things with our staff. It is more than full-time, and it takes a true commitment. Yeah, I used to ski a fair amount, and I'm down to about 10 times a year. But
10 seconds.
a lot of that it's a wonderful reason for me to live is because I am passionate about this job. And it is a very difficult job, and you have to be a hard worker, and you have to be very, very disciplined, and I am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Real quick before you ask the next question, overwhelmed with all these questions. This is amazing. We will not get to all of these, so we apologize if we don't get to yours. Some of them are redundant, which is great. It means that we all have a common interest here. But we will do our best to get through these with 90 seconds, and then we'll try to limit our rebuttals if we can, just to get as many questions going.
Yeah, so next I'll actually turn to Jeffrey. This is a combination of a question we received online and tonight in person, so I'll sort of two-part it. One, how long have you been registered to vote in El Dorado County? And as a follow-up, out of the 4 candidates running, you're the relative unknown dark horse candidate. So could you really how do you feel that you're fit to represent the community that maybe not everyone knows who you are or feels that you've been around, I'm not a believer in it, but long enough to be a local phase?
How long I've been registered in El Dorado County? I believe it's been 3 years. But I don't think that is a problem. I've been registered to vote since I was 18, and I took that responsibility very seriously. We owned our home up here for 10 years, knowing that we would retire here. And my family's been here, my kids have gone through the school system, et cetera, while I was in Washington, and it's a long commute from Washington, D.C. But how do I represent the community? Because I'm not. The thing is that's actually a benefit to you, because I bring the experience from national, state, and local perspectives. You have people who've lived here all their lives, but they haven't received that exposure to how do we solve our issues. And I think that's what I'm bringing for you and how I can represent.
Thank you. Anybody care to rebut that at all?
Kenny, then Sue?
As far as worldly experiences go, I spent 20 years in the Nevada Army National Guard and retired a major. I've been all over the world. I was in Desert Storm 1. And as far as dealing with people, yeah, I've had the experience on that. I don't have any political experience because I've never been a supervisor. I've never been a city council member. I've never been in that position, but I have had everything leading up to that position.
Sue, 30 seconds?
Well, quickly, as I said, experience is important. It's vital that you understand our community, vital. And a couple of years in this community does not get you there. You need a lot of experience to understand exactly what's going on, because there are 15 different departments in this county.
15 seconds?
And every one of them has different issue that will absolutely have an effect on your district, from Tahoe to Pollock Pines to South Lake Tahoe, and you better know your community really well.
Thank you, Sue.
Awesome.
Norma, I'll give you a chance at that if you would like it. Otherwise, the next question's for you.
Well,
Stand, please.
dang, got to remember that. I'm sorry. Experience takes a lot of forms. And when I ran in 2005, I was the one that was told that I had the least experience. But I was involved in my community. I think that you look at their commitment to community.
15 seconds.
And it doesn't matter whether you've been here 3 years or 30 years. It's your commitment to your community. And I think that experience is invaluable.
Thank you, Norma.
So you can stay standing. This next question is for you. Again, a question that was received quite a few times online and in person. So when the last time you were supervisor, if those are not familiar, there was a lawsuit you joined against the county. So a variety of questions we really received was, with your history in the county and previously serving, why do you think you are fit to re-enter service as supervisor, and how are you going to rebuild any bridges you burned in the process between the last time you're serving and now? And you have 90 seconds.
Thank you for that question. First of all, I don't think I burned many bridges. And I think that part of that, I'll answer that question first. I have always been a person that has been very open about what I do and how I approach it, and I'm a very attentive listener. My reasoning behind the lawsuit was a clarification on a legal interpretation with regards to compensation. County council had a specific interpretation of that. Supervisor Briggs had done a significant amount of research through his own legal counsel about that particular issue. He presented that to me, and the argument was pretty valid. Even though at the end I may have lost, I think the county won because there was a clarification on policy. And I don't think it's wrong that if you have a legal concern, that you can go up to your boss and say, I have a concern, and if you have to litigate it, litigate it. I don't think any relationships were damaged as a
15
result of that.
seconds.
That's my personal feeling, and that's what I've been told by people. So I have and still
5
maintain
seconds.
some great relationships in the county, both in the East Slope and the West Slope.
Thank you,
That
Norma.
can help me move my policies forward.
Thank you. Would anyone care for 30 seconds in response to that?
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to the next question. Kenny, you can keep the microphone. This one will be for you. So you've been very vocal about the process to getting the Myers area plan adopted, and especially vocal about Sue's recusal on that matter. So I would like to first ask you, if you were in Sue Novosela's position during the development of the area plan, would you also have had to recuse yourself from that process? And moving forward as county supervisor, how will you best implement the plan that is in the books?
No, I would not have had to recuse myself from that plan. The TRPA just passed that plan in conception to move it forward to the Board of Supervisors. And in that, I contacted the head of the TRPA, Joanne, and asked her to reiterate and tell me where she got the information to pass that plan. And she said she got it from Brendan Ferry, who was, and I wrote this all in an article, she got it from Brendan Ferry, who told her and the TRPA board that the community of Myers was in complete agreement with this. We've had community meetings. We've had several businesses have all gone forward with this. Unfortunately, we have not had a Myers community plan meeting since August of 2014. At that time, Sue and I were running for supervisor. We both said the same thing. Do not move this plan forward until we get a supervisor in there that can make a decision and deal with the
30
community
seconds.
and everything else. Then when Sue became a supervisor, it was turned out that she had to recuse herself. If she didn't have to recuse herself, I don't see there would be a problem. But the community of Myers has been left out in the cold for 4 years, and
15
we have
seconds.
had no community involvement with the Myers plan since August of 2014.
Can I
Sue?
respond to
Yep.
that?
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, I have in my hand a report from the FPPC. And here's what it says. Based on the fact that you have real property interests located directly within the proposed Myers area plan, we find that decisions regarding the plan foreseeably affect your interest in a material way. Accordingly, you may not make, participate in making, or use your position to influence any decisions regarding the Myers area plan. Kenny owns property within the Myers area plan. He would have to recuse himself or he would be breaking the law. Mr. Spencer over here owns real property and would have to also recuse himself or be breaking the law. It's a FPPC law. It doesn't have anything to do with TRPA or with the county. This has to do with FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission, located in Sacramento.
So-
And that there is the rule. It doesn't matter that in a 700,
Thank
Form
you, Sue.
700, you don't have
Thank
to
you, Sue.
report it.
Jeffrey, I'll go to you since she mentioned you. Do you own real property within the Myers area plan? Myers.
I do not own within the Myers plan. I am outside the Myers plan.
Norma, I'll go to you, then come back to Kenny.
You know, this is very interesting, a very interesting discussion. But I think that the big thing is, what Kenny brought up was involvement of the community. So if you find yourself in the unfortunate position of having to recuse yourself from a major decision,
15 seconds.
then what are you going to do to create that sense of community that they're still involved in the process? Whether it's appointing a community advocate or
5
having
seconds.
a community-based committee to actually look at the plan.
Thank you,
and
Norma.
they be the spokesperson.
So to Kenny.
That decision was based on the ownership of commercial property. There was going to be a rezoning of the Myers area plan, and in that area, Sue and her husband owned commercial property in there. They would have, and this was determined by the FPPC, they could have been, you know, they would have made
10
money
seconds.
off of a rezoning. Okay, I own a house there. I don't own a commercial property. This was based on commercial property anyway and rezoning.
Thank you, Kenny. I'll
Thank
go
you.
to Sue.
Thank you, and I apologize because my husband is in real estate, so I do understand the difference. Real property is what FPPC said. Real property is also your personal property. It's your real property. That doesn't, it did not say commercial, it just said real property. Myers area plan is an entire area that includes the Tahoe
10
Paradise
seconds.
Resort Improvement District, and you too own property within that. That's real property. You have a conflict.
Well, I can't verify that direct statement now. I'm looking at Claire from the Tahoe Daily Tribune to make note of that. So, Sue, since you mentioned, we're on the topic of recusals, there's a couple questions we received about the topic of VHRs and that your family is in the real estate mortgage loaning business. Do you feel that you have a conflict of interest with VHRs, and should you recuse yourself on that topic as well?
90
seconds.
Thank you. So I also went back to the FPPC and asked, and they made a ruling. I do not have, because of a ruling that they have, that if it's a bigger public issue, that basically everybody would have the same type of issue with being in the tourism business up here. So no, I do not have a conflict of interest, number one. And
10 seconds?
secondly,
Oh, sorry, no, keep going, sorry.
no, that's okay. And secondly,
shut
most
off.
people don't, because it's a tourism trade area. And my husband and I do not own this big giant, I keep hearing comments about we have a lot of property. We don't. Okay, what property we do have is very small. We only have a few lots. What we do have are loans, small business loans, what my husband has done. He's been doing that for over 40 years. He invests in small businesses in our community. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm not ashamed to say he has been a successful businessman because of that.
30 seconds.
But he started as a drive-through realty in Myers, next to Myers Downtown Cafe, that little Sunrise shop there. That was his first place of business. And he's taken that, and he's had a successful business. I'm very proud of him. But the bottom line is, no, I don't have a conflict with a vacation rental resident.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone that would like to add on to that? Norma? Norma, and then Kenny.
30 seconds each.
This,
Stan, please.
this conflict of interest issue and the recusal part of it, I believe, though, there's a caveat in there, is if there is personal gain as a result of what is being considered. That is part of that recusal process.
10 seconds.
But that's one thing. And the second thing is that, thank you for your history with your husband and the real estate part of it, but also understand that if there is a real estate deal where the county is purchasing land that involves your husband
Okay, Norma.
as the realtor,
Thank you.
then there definitely has to be
Thank you,
recusal
Norma.
on that.
Thank you.
Kenny? Kenny, and then I'll let Sue address that.
The county property that you're talking about is the brand-new $83 million county courthouse down in Placerville. The property is owned by a gentleman down there, and Sue had to recuse herself from that also because it would have been personal gain because her husband's company
10 seconds.
owns the note to that. So she had to recuse herself there. So if we all have to recuse ourselves from anything, why are we even running for supervisor then? If we know we're gonna have to recuse ourselves.
Thank
I
you,
can
Kenny.
tell you, I will,
Thank you. Sue, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I did have to recuse myself from that, by the way. There wasn't a conflict. I decided not to be a part of the discussion. There has been no vote on the courthouse per se. We don't even know where we're going to put it yet. So no, that is not an issue. So, and I have to say, again, I'm very proud of what my husband's done, and we all have had. I pointed out some conflict of interest.
10
It's
seconds.
not uncommon to have a conflict of interest. The difference is that you make it known and you are very upfront about it, because the worst thing you can do is get in trouble and take everything that the county has tried to
Thank
work
you,
on
Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
and had it go down the drain.
Thank you.
So it's important.
Yeah, so if you do want to pass the microphone to Norma, I'll give you 30 seconds, and then
And
the
then
next
we'll move
question
on.
is going to be for you, actually, Norma,
So
as
the
well.
issue isn't the recusal. The issue isn't the recusal. If you have to recuse, obviously there's a reason why that law is in place. What are you going to do to make sure that the community's voice is heard on the issue? So if you can't be there, if you can't be at the table because of some personal interest or whatever,
10 seconds.
then what are you going to do to make sure that the community's voice is heard on that issue? What are
you.
you going to employ?
Thank you,
to make sure
Norma.
that the community doesn't feel left out?
Thank you. Next question, moving on, this question from the audience, and then I'm going to build on it from there. When you were Supervisor of District 5, you voted to support the construction of the Red Hawk Casino. How did your action help the economy of South Lake Tahoe, question mark? But adding on in the bigger context of it, with all of the booming development in the foothills of El Dorado County, how do you think that in the larger context either hurts or helps Tahoe, and what's your stance on that development? But I would like you to address the Red Hawk Casino vote as well.
What I voted on the Red Hawk thing is that there was a settlement agreement on the environmental document. That's what I voted on, to make sure that the county got some money, because, believe it or not, there was a proposition that essentially allowed Indian gaming to happen in throughout all parts of California. The only argument the county had to do with the environmental document. And so what we looked at is, well, how can we get compensation for the development of that casino? If I had my druthers, no, I wouldn't want a casino there. I believe that there was a point there that casinos were a point of diminishing returns. But the truth of the matter is that the casino was going to be happening anyway. So how much money was the county going to be able to benefit from that? And we got the largest settlement, at that point was the largest settlement on the county, from the county standpoint.
30 seconds.
And what's your take on present-day development proposals on the West Slope and how they affect our local economy?
I am really concerned about some of the development in terms of its impact on the current infrastructure in the county, particularly in dealing with the water and the traffic
10
issues.
seconds.
So those would be my biggest concerns. I think you need to downsize some of those developments, and also you have to be reflective of what the community wants in those areas.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Norma.
Norma.
Jeffrey, as your work experience has you in the government planning world, would you care to comment on your thoughts on the development on the West Slope and their impact on Tahoe?
I think that we had a general plan, and we have very specific plans in other areas on the development. Sacramento has basically said this is the extent of our urban services boundary, and we can't go beyond it. And they've encroached up the hill. We see what's happened in El Dorado Hills, now is happening in Cameron Park and other communities.
10 seconds.
We need to abide by the documents that we've already established. We need to stop the growth because it is putting too much stress on our infrastructure.
Thank you.
Sue? And then
Anybody
Kenny?
else?
Yeah, well, back to Red Hawk, I guess, and then on.
Yep, you have
whatever we're
whatever you
doing.
want with your
You got
30
30
seconds.
seconds.
Okay,
Ready,
you
go.
know, So the county was in a difficult spot because the federal government had already ruled that they were going to allow Red Hawk. So the concern is, what do we do? Now we're looking at open gambling throughout our country. It's not just Nevada anymore. We're talking about sports gambling wherever. So we've had to reinvent ourselves, and I think the county is doing a really good job at looking at how we look at our revenues, how we promote
10
economic
seconds.
development in our communities without gaming, and I think that we've done a good job on that, and I'm very proud of that.
Thank
and
you.
There was a second one. Okay.
We're
Kenny,
time.
any
It's okay. It's all right.
anything to add?
know.
Yeah, I
It's
agree with
quick.
Jeffrey on we need to follow the general plan, and that is not being done yet. That being said, 4 years ago when I ran, I got a call from the Red Hawk Casino asking me to come down there and have lunch, and they wanted to donate to my campaign. I politely told them that, I applaud you guys building your business. I have no problems with you building it. You're going to build it anyway.
10 seconds.
But you guys almost destroyed my town up here when you did that, so I cannot come down there and play nice, and I did not accept the money. And you need somebody like that to be able to stand up and say that.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you. So for the next question, we'll start with Jeffrey, but I would love the question asker would love to hear everyone's take on this during your 30-second opportunity. And it's in the realm of the environment. Obviously, Lake Tahoe is a natural wonder and a natural jewel that we must protect. So what is your stance first on balancing environmental protection and the native species and fauna that live in Tahoe in terms of balancing that with development? And then second, what policies do you support with the expanded development of renewable energy in the county?
I'm going to actually take the second part first. I think there's a lot of technologies out there that we need to look at on renewable energy sources and other types of reutilization of our waste and things like that. But as far as my environmental record, I think that I have over 12 years of working in the environment. 5 years at Fish and Game, and I've served on the boards of 2 conservancies down the hill. We were awarded Watershed of the Year when I was president of the Dry Creek Conservancy, and the Sutter County Board of Supervisors appointed me as their representative on the Natomas Basin Conservancy. I've walked areas up here. I just recently walked Washoe Meadows, and I see what the state is proposing. And I also saw some very rare species at this elevation and some of the land formations. I think these are cultural and natural resources we need to preserve. We need to work to balance the development interests because we do have a housing
30
shortage.
seconds.
However, we also have to be sensitive and look at how our natural communities coexist with our own communities.
And then as a simple yes or no, would you support El Dorado County pledging to go 100% renewable energy by 2030?
I would like to support a pledge, but I want to make
A
sure it's
simple,
attainable.
a simple yes or no.
Yes, as long as it's attainable.
Norma, 30 seconds. Environmental protection, balance, renewable energy.
I'll also answer the last question first, is that, yes, absolutely, there's a great, tremendous opportunity here, and yes, I would support being at 100% renewable energy by 2030, and I think it is attainable. I think that since leaving office, most of my interest has been on utilization of biomass for
15 seconds.
to creating that energy source, and there's a lot of possibilities in the technology. There always has to be a balance in the environment. We have to protect it,
5 seconds, Norma.
and it's important that we do it. And there is a way to protect it and become economically sustainable at the same time.
Thank you.
Kenny?
I'm a tree service contractor, so I recycle all the time, firewood, wood chips. We have been involved with biomass for years. We used to send our wood chips down to the Nevada state prisons to create electricity. We used to send it down to Bentley, down to Gardnerville, to create electricity. The problem is there's no money in that. So we have been unable to send
10
all of our
seconds.
biomass down there. And yes, I would support that also. But, you know, we recycle all the time. And we also have the TRPA, the League to Save Lake Tahoe, and the Sierra Club and everything else
Thank you,
to
Kenny.
protect the environment.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank
Sue?
you.
Yeah, well, being a member of the California Tahoe Conservancy Board and also TRPA, I'm so excited right now because there is a balancing act that has to happen. And I have to say that the Johnson Meadows project the Conservancy is working on is fabulous. Very, very excited. That is just a beginning of a part of how we balance economic development with
10
the
seconds.
environment. Very, very important. And yes, I am all for renewable energy. Can't wait.
Great. So, Norma, it seems like you have a burning
Yeah.
30
I
seconds.
30 seconds.
I just can't let it pass when someone says that biomass doesn't pay out. It does. I have the finances to do it. I mean, I have the pro formas and everything, and how we can actually generate energy, not only electricity, but biofuels, biochar, and there's marketability for it. I've been working on this
10 seconds.
technology, so there is money to be made in biomass utilization.
Anything
Thank
in
you.
response to that, Kenny?
30
We
seconds, Kenny.
tried that, and the problem is that we were more than willing to send everything down there. And yes, there is, I mean, the paperwork, everything pans out. The money doesn't pan out. That's why they told us not to send it down there anymore. They weren't making any money on the environment and the biomass,
10
so they
seconds.
told us to keep our wood chips up here. And if you go out to Eddie's yard, there's probably 3,000 yards of wood chips out there. Unfortunately, the people that we send the stuff to,
Thank you,
if
Kenny.
they go,
I will add one editorial note, being in this world professionally. Biomass does have some viability, but solar and other sources of renewable energy have far outpaced the cost of biomass. So as Kenny, it's not a complete waste in an industry, but there is a lot of challenges to making it reasonable and affordable. So moving on.
So if I,
Mo-
you're absolutely correct, but we can have a conversation after that, because I have some information.
So moving on to the, the next question, and we'll start with Sue on this one. Since you brought up mental health earlier, there's really a need for mental health resources in our community, as you pointed out. Why aren't, as current supervisor, why aren't those resources coming to our county? What is stopping those resources that we so desperately need from coming here?
our state legislature to start with. Unfortunately, mental health is completely 100% funded through our state legislature, and it just has not been a big enough issue. And we all understand, like I was saying before, it's between the homelessness, between the drug addiction, and between our lack of housing to be able to take care of those that need it most, our mental health patients. It's so difficult. What I'm hoping is as we move out of a jail system, perhaps even our juvenile jail system up here, can we find an area, find some homes for our mental health clients, the ones that need it most? And that's what I'm really hoping we can do. That it is incredibly important, is finding a place to house those that don't have a place to go because of their mental illness.
Great. Who would like to, Jeffrey, 30 seconds? Anybody?
You don't have
Norma?
So I have some very deep personal concerns with mental health system and how we bring resources in here. It's true that a lot of the funding comes from the Mental Health Services Act that is a bond measure that was passed quite a while ago. But the county also has to make a commitment out of its general fund.
10 seconds.
Because investment in the mental health system helps in so many levels. Because as individuals realize their own self-sufficiency,
Thank you, Norma.
they become more productive individuals.
Thank
They
you,
feel they're
Norma.
part of their
Thank you.
community.
Thank you.
Kenny?
Anybody else with mental health?
As far as mental health goes, you need somebody in there that is going to be an advocate that has earned their degrees, not in a college, but have earned it on the street. A lot of people know, I've been in town a long time, I've lost 2 children to mental health issues. I am very experienced with this.
10 seconds,
We
Kenny.
need to be proactive, not reactive.
Any final comments?
No, I just have to say I agree. We do need to be proactive. That's why I think it's important that we start to look for areas that we can work upon, possibly our facilities within the county. But the funding has to come from our state and federal level. It's just too big of a problem.
Norma, and then we'll move on to the next question.
One thing that in my experience is that the system, the mental health system for a family that is facing a loved one that is going through it is very complex. We need connectivity with all the services so that that individual, whoever is affected by mental illness, can get the help they need.
10 seconds.
And that's
Norma.
where the investment from the county comes from.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this one was addressed to Kenny. How do you feel about multifamily dwellings in the county? What are your thoughts about additional dwelling units on single-family residential parcels such as granny units or tiny homes? And if you are in support of them, how would you fight to get those allowed in the El Dorado community?
First off, we need to follow the zoning codes that the TRPA, the city, and the county have already put in place. From that, if we have to change an R1, which is single-family residence, to a multifamily residence, that will have to be done at the county level to change the zoning. If we want to have granny units, yeah, I believe in, that's the American way. You need to make a little extra money, but we need to do it the legal way. And right now, we're doing everything the illegal way because we are not following the zoning in place right now.
Sue? Sue?
Jump
No,
in. 30 seconds.
thank you. Yeah, I'm all for the idea of tiny homes and smaller multi-family units. I think it is a way of our future. As we grow with our workforce housing issue that we have, it's difficult. It's difficult to get proper, affordable housing in our area, and this is one such solution, is to be able to have
10
denser
seconds.
areas for our population. As a founder of the local housing task force, I think we are working and struggling with that idea every day on how do you find
Thanks, Sue.
affordable
Thank you,
housing.
Sue.
And we're looking for it.
Thank you, Sue.
Jeffrey?
I do support, and California has labeled it the casita movement, and that's the small granny units in the back. We have my mother-in-law, who is 89, living with us, and so, it would be nice to have some space for her. But
Not
at
the house.
TRPA, we are cramped. But nonetheless, TRPA would be saying no because of coverage and all the other regulations
10
that we have
seconds,
there.
Jeffrey.
That's where we run into the problems. As I mentioned earlier, we have conflicting regulations, and we need to work through that. And you need someone with experience to do that.
Thank you.
Norma?
And so the county is in the process of working with the TRPA on an MOU that essentially is going to bring the whole thing with regards to residential development and everything back to the county's hands. And that is in the process. Yes, I agree that we need to look at this issue in terms of what we can do.
10
But
seconds.
while we're looking at that, let's make sure that we also include that you cannot have commercial enterprises in your neighborhoods.
Thank
That
you.
needs to
Thank
be
you, Sue.
included in that legislation
Norma.
as well.
Thank you.
Follow up?
Anybody?
All right, we'll start with Kenny. I'm going to do 30 seconds on this question because I want to hear from everyone, and we're running close to our time limit. Do you feel that VHRs are illegally operating in neighborhoods as commercial businesses in residential zoning?
Yes.
Sue?
No, actually, VHRs are an allowable use. And my issue with VHRs is how do we keep the peace and quiet? How do we create peace and quiet in our neighborhoods? And that, I believe, is a start of what we're doing, and that's we start with enforcement. See if we can get enforcement to bring us back to that peaceful, quiet ability to
10
have
seconds.
visitors in our neighborhoods. They want to be in our neighborhoods. Let's try to work with that.
Yes, it is a violation, and we need to separate it because it is a new use, and zoning laws are just that. When we talk about enforcement, TRPA doesn't even have an enforcement officer on staff. We are really behind the 8 ball in keeping enforcement. But we need to keep enforcement across the board because we have bad neighbors who live there full time as well.
10 seconds.
But the bottom line is we need to separate these uses, these commercial uses from our residences and give them the peace and quiet that they enjoy.
Thank you.
So if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? So yes, there are commercial uses, and yes, the county has it within its purview to limit those uses. They do that now. So the county can very easily step up and say, these are not allowable uses within our neighborhoods. They can say that. We got it clear at the meeting at the middle
10
school
seconds.
from county council. Yes, we can do this. We can make those limitations, and we can do that now. That's something we can do now.
All right, it seems like Jeffrey would like to respond to that, and then Kenny, and then Sue.
I think one of the issues is we seem to think this is a recent issue, and it's not. It's actually been going on for over 15 years, and our leadership has not addressed it. If you look at the TRPA records, that was when they decided it was a single-family home was a allowed use as a commercial business, as a vacation home rental. And it's only gotten worse with the technologies. And so we need to address
10
it
seconds.
because it's not going to go away and it's only going to get worse.
So the county is addressing this right now. It's why we have a vacation rental ad hoc committee who is dealing with this right now. We're looking at all the issues, and we're going to be coming back to our board with some recommendations, and we will be making changes. And I certainly am hoping that we have the ability to limit what we have. But the bottom line is these are legal, and we need to understand that they're
seconds.
working within our community. They are within our community. Whether we make them legal or not, they're there.
Yeah, boy, the vacation rental, we need to get rid of the 6% that are causing 100% of the problems. And we've had a lot of these problems in the last 4 or 5 years. The problem is that these out-of-town companies are coming in, and the out-of-town owners, when you have a number that you call, you have a problem at a vacation rental, and you call that number, you get a place in Texas or anything else.
10 seconds.
Any place else. We need to have a brick and mortar place where these people go through so we can get someone there within 30 minutes. Yes, this vacation rentals have been up here forever. I've been dealing with them for 41 years.
Thanks,
I make
Kenny.
money up.
So for our next question, again, I'm going to go 30 seconds for everyone so we can get some more questions in. Sue, I'll start with you. During one of your previous answers, you talked about diversifying our economy, getting away from the casino economy. Obviously, our tourist economy is about bursting at the seams. What, as county supervisor, what other economic development strategies are you currently employing, do you want to employ, to bring different industries to our region?
Yeah, you know, probably one of the most difficult issues we have right now with bringing economic development is our infrastructure. And most importantly within that is broadband. I'm on a broadband ad hoc committee. We are working tirelessly right now to try to figure out how to get last mile broadband into our basin. It's around us, but it's not in the basin. And it causes an issue for our workforce when they can't get online to do their work. So it's a huge economic problem we have, and I'm hoping that, that we can get that one solved.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Thank
Sue.
you. Kenny?
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry.
We definitely
Adrian.
need broadband here. The problem is that we are going to have one new tower come in. It's going out at Lake Valley Fire Department. With their AT&T wants to put up another tower, and they want to put it up in an area where it will give broadband to the entire Myers area. The problem is that the TRPA is only allowing one tower in the basin right now.
10
So if we
seconds.
can get the TRPA to allow more than one tower, we can have broadband in this basin.
Thank you.
Norma? And then Jeffrey.
So,
Stand, please.
so the Tahoe Prosperity Plan identifies broadband as one of the major infrastructure issues that we need to resolve in order to enhance or diversify economic development opportunities. And so I believe the question was specifically about economic development
Economic
opportunities, so I want to address that. And there's all kinds of work that is being done
10 seconds,
with
Norma.
regards to that. Also identified in that plan are three industry clusters. Of course, there's visitor services, the second one is healthcare, and the other one has to do with environmental sciences.
Thank you, Norma.
As we
you,
develop
Norma.
those
Thank you.
clusters, then you'll find the economic development
Jeffrey?
opportunities.
I've looked at other communities similar to ours, mountain communities, and they have ski manufacturers, distilleries, snowboard manufacturers, so we need to diversify. Our tourism economy is booming, but we're putting all our eggs in one basket. And so we need to diversify our economy. And one of the ideas that I'd had was to make ourselves a center of excellence for the environment.
10 seconds.
We have so much to offer, and we could be a worldwide target for people to come here at a convention center if we would build one.
Thank you.
So with our remaining few minutes, I would like to start with Kenny going down the line. Can you please give a quick 15-second last pitch on why the residents of El Dorado County should vote for you on June 5th?
I am very involved in this community. My wife and I were married in Emerald Bay. I went to LTCC. My son went to LTCC. My wife went to LTCC. I don't belong to any major club, but I donate to every single club in this community.
Thank you,
And
Ken.
Thank you, Kenny. It's 15 seconds, it's fast.
got to be quick.
Good.
You ready?
Ready?
Take a breath and
Go. As your supervisor, I understand my role clearly. I serve you. I listen to you. And I make the best informed decisions for your best interests. It's incredibly important. I have received the endorsements of
Thank you, Sue.
a lot of people.
you can ask her about her endorsements later. All right, here we go, Jeffrey.
All right. I bring all the experience of my 40 years of public service across this nation. We need fresh ideas. Living here is great if you're a longtime resident, but if you keep doing the same thing and electing the locals that don't have
Thank you,
those new
Jeffrey.
ideas.
Norma?
We got the gist.
I am the candidate who best suits the next stages of Tahoe's evolution in refining a vision and implementing ways to improve technology, advance economic clusters for education, tourism, recreation, and environmental sciences. And
Perfect.
for
Thank you,
taking
Norma.
steps.
Thank you.
So with that,
Please
job,
come see
everybody.
me after.
I would like, thank you. I would like to thank all of our candidates for sitting through our grilling tonight. I would like to thank all of you here in person on the live stream for coming, for attending, for getting involved. Hopefully you're all here because you're going to vote. Tell your friends to vote. The deadline to register is May 21st. You still have time. Ballots just went out in the mail today. Register absentee. It's easy. We have information and links on the table out front. We have all this information at TahoeTRYP.org/vote. get out, get educated, make a difference in your community. Again, thank you, supervisors. Thank you, Tahoe Production House, for your wonderful, amazing streaming services. And thank you, Hotel Azure, for putting us up. Thank you all, and see you next time.
And thank you, Chambers.
And Chambers, the Chambers, sorry.